Do you even know what you're doing to me? Diana's fingers tangled with mine around the water glass. I'm Ethan, 22, engineering major, 3 months from graduation. I'd been Jake's best friend for 3 years. His mom knew my coffee order, kept my snacks stocked. That Tuesday in their garage changed everything. She'd asked me to explain each repair step, leaned close to see, her breath warm on my neck while I worked. When the engine finally purred to life, I caught her waist in celebration. We froze mid-spin. Every point of contact suddenly electric, my hands on her waist, hers on my shoulders. The smile faded from her lips. Something else took its place. That's when she asked the question, "But before we begin, let me know where in the world you're watching from today." It's always fascinating seeing who's joining us from around the world. Jake and I met sophomore year in Marketing 301, bonding over our shared hatred of group projects and love of cheap pizza. 3 years later, we're still close friends despite taking different paths after graduation. Him diving into the startup world while I stuck around for grad school. His family home became my second home during breaks, with his mom Diana always insisting I join them for Sunday dinners or holiday gatherings. The Castellanos had this way of making everyone feel like family. So when Jake's text buzzed in on Saturday afternoon, "Can't help Mom with car trouble. Stuck at work," I didn't hesitate to offer. I knew Diana had been having issues with her old sedan, and Jake had promised to look at it over spring break. "I can come by," I texted back. "Done this before on my sister's car." His reply came quick. "You're the best, man. Mom's probably in the driveway cursing at it right now." 20 minutes later, I pulled into their suburban cul-de-sac. Diana was exactly where Jake predicted, standing by the open hood of her silver Camry with her hands on her hips. She wore faded jeans and what I recognized as Jake's old university sweatshirt, her auburn hair pulled back in a messy ponytail. When she saw me, relief washed over her face. "My hero," she called out, smiling. "Jake said you were coming, but I didn't expect you so quickly." "Spring break means free time," I said, walking up to join her. "Plus, I couldn't leave you stranded." She touched my arm gratefully, and something shifted in that moment, a subtle awareness I'd never felt before. Her hand lingered just a second longer than usual, and I found myself noticing details I'd somehow missed in 3 years of friendship. The way her hazel eyes caught the afternoon light, how her smile created small dimples at the corners of her mouth. I cleared my throat, focusing on the car. "So what's it doing?" "Making this awful grinding noise when I accelerate," she said, gesturing vaguely at the engine. "And sometimes it just dies at stoplights. Could be a few things." "Let me grab some tools and we'll take a look." I headed for the garage, where I knew Jake kept his basic tool set. "You don't need to stick around. Might take a while to diagnose." "Actually," Diana said, following me into the garage, "I'd like to learn. I'm tired of feeling helpless every time something goes wrong with this car." I emerged with the tools, to find her settling cross-legged on the concrete floor beside where I'd need to work. She'd grabbed an old moving blanket to sit on, making herself comfortable for the long haul. Something about her determination to understand, to not just leave the man's work to someone else, made me smile. "Okay, Professor," she said, leaning forward with genuine interest. "Teach me everything you know." I laid down on the creeper, positioning myself under the car. "First rule of car repair, always start with the basics. We'll check fluids, belts, anything obvious before getting complicated." "Makes sense," she said, and I could hear her shifting closer to see better. The casual domesticity of the moment struck me. Her sitting there while I worked, asking questions. The familiar garage smell mixing with what I now realized was her light perfume. It felt strangely intimate, this shared space beneath her car, her voice coming from just beside my shoulder. I reached for a wrench, suddenly very aware of her presence and wondering why it felt so different than all the other times I've been in this garage, all the other conversations we'd had. Something had changed, but I couldn't quite name what it was. I adjusted the creeper to get a better angle on the transmission, the metal cold against my back. "Could you hand me that socket wrench? The one with the red handle? This one?" Dana passed it down, her fingers brushing mine in the handoff. "Perfect, thanks." I started loosening bolts, falling into the familiar rhythm of mechanical work. So in my advanced fluid dynamics class, we actually studied how transmission systems— "Wait," she interrupted, genuine curiosity in her voice. "You're in mechanical engineering? I thought you were in business with Jake." That was just the marketing minor. Engineering's my real passion, though my parents still think I should have stuck with business. I paused to wipe some grime off a bolt. "They're convinced engineers don't make enough money, but you love it," Diana said. It wasn't a question. "I can hear it in your voice when you explain things." Her observation caught me off guard. "Yeah, I do." "How'd you know?" "Mother's intuition," she laughed softly. "Plus, you light up every time you talk about your projects. Not everyone has that." I worked in silence for a moment, touched by her attention to detail. "Could you hand me that flashlight?" She passed it down. "You know, I always wanted to learn about cars, but Robert, Jake's father, he insisted on handling everything mechanical. Said it wasn't worth my time." Something in her tone made me slide out slightly to look at her. "That doesn't seem fair." Life rarely is," she said, then shook her head. "But enough about cars. What about you? What do you do when you're not rescuing stranded mothers with broken-down sedans?" "Mostly study. Sometimes sleep." I ducked back under the car. "What about you?" "What does Diana Castellano do when she's not being rescued?" There was a pause longer than I expected. "I used to have a photography studio, actually, before Jake was born. Nothing fancy. Portraits, weddings, some artistic work on the side." The wistfulness in her voice made me stop working. "Used to?" Had to sell the equipment when we found out I was pregnant. It was the responsible thing to do." She laughed, but it didn't sound happy. "That was 21 years ago now." I needed different tools, so I rolled out from under the car. Diana was staring past the garage door, lost in thought, her expression open and vulnerable in a way I'd never seen before. When she noticed me watching, she quickly rearranged her features into a smile. "Listen to me," getting all melancholy over. "Ancient history," she said, waving her hand dismissively. "I'm sure you didn't come over to hear me reminisce about my lost artistic dreams." Something in my chest tightened at her forced lightness. Before I could think better of it, I said, "Well, I guess you could say your transmission problems really developed into something else." There was a beat of silence, then Diana's eyes widened as the terrible pun registered. She burst out laughing, not the polite chuckle I was used to hearing at family dinners, but a real spontaneous laugh that seemed to surprise even her. The sound filled the garage, transforming the space. "That was absolutely awful," she managed, between giggles, wiping her eyes. "I can't believe you just said that." "I have plenty more car puns in reserve," I warned, grinning. "Don't test me." She was still smiling as I gathered the new tools I needed, and something felt different now. The air charged with a new awareness I couldn't quite name. When I slid back under the car, I found myself intensely conscious of her presence beside me, the way her knee was just inches from my shoulder, the soft sound of her breathing in the quiet garage. "So tell me more about your engineering classes," she said, passing me a wrench I hadn't even asked for yet. "I want to hear everything." After a thorough inspection, I had to slide out from under the car with bad news. The problem was worse than I'd initially thought. Diana's expression fell as I wiped my hands on a shop rag, already knowing what my grim look meant. Not an easy fix? She asked, standing up from her spot on the garage floor. The oil pan is damaged, probably hit something on the road. It's causing the transmission fluid to leak. I gestured under the car. We'll need replacement parts to fix it properly. Diana crossed her arms, hugging herself slightly. How long would that take? I pulled out my phone, quickly checking the local auto parts stores. Monday at the earliest, looks like. Maybe Tuesday morning to be safe. I scrolled through the options. I'll need to special order the specific model for your car. Oh, she bit her lip, clearly disappointed. Then she reached for her purse, which was sitting on a nearby workbench. Well, I really appreciate you coming out here today. Please let me pay you for your time. What? No. I held up my hands as she pulled out her wallet. I can't take your money, Mrs. Castellano. Diana, she corrected automatically, still holding out her wallet. And of course I'm going to pay you. You spent your whole afternoon on this. Really, I can't. The thought of taking money from her made me deeply uncomfortable. You guys are practically family. Jake would never let me hear the end of it. She gave me a look that was pure mom. You're a college student. You can't afford to do charity mechanical work. It's not charity, I protested. It's helping out a friend. We stood there at an impasse, her wallet still extended, neither of us willing to back down. Then an idea struck me. How about a trade instead? I suggested. You feed me while I work on the car when the parts come in. That way we're even. Diana's whole face brightened at the suggestion, and something warm bloomed in my chest at being the cause of that smile. Now that, she said, finally putting her wallet away, is a deal I can agree to. She held out her hand to shake on it, very businesslike, except for the playful glint in her eyes. I took it, and her grip was warm and firm, her fingers wrapping surely around mine. Neither of us immediately let go. The handshake lingered, suspended in the garage's dim light, and I found myself noticing little details, the softness of her palm against mine, a small silver ring on her middle finger, the way her thumb rested against my wrist dot when we finally released our grip. It felt like waking from a dream. Diana tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear, that same slight smile playing at her lips. So, she said, her voice just a touch softer than before, would Monday evening work for you? Jake has his internship until late, so the timing should be perfect. My stomach did an odd little flip at the thought of being alone with her again. Yeah, Monday's good. I can come by after my last class. Perfect. She picked up her purse from the workbench. I'll make sure to have something special ready for dinner. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak right away. The prospect of Monday evening stretched before me like a road I couldn't quite see the end of. When I found my voice again, I managed, sounds like a plan. Diana paused at the garage door looking back at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. Thank you again for coming over today. Even if we couldn't fix it, I'm glad you were here. The sincerity in her voice made my chest tight. Any time, I said, and meant it. I'd like to say, I spent Sunday productively catching up on coursework, but my mind kept drifting back to that lingering handshake in Diana's garage. I must have read the same paragraph in my fluid dynamics textbook 20 times before giving up. Even my friends' group chat couldn't hold my attention. Their messages about weekend plans floating past unnoticed. Monday crawled by until my last class finally ended. I changed shirts twice before heading over, telling myself I was being ridiculous. It was just dinner and car repair with my best friend's mom. Nothing more. The evening sun was casting long shadows when I pulled into the familiar driveway. Diana opened the door before I could knock, and my carefully rehearsed greeting died in my throat. She wore a yellow sundress that caught the golden light, making her seem to glow from within. Her hair fell in loose waves around her shoulders, and I realized I'd never seen it down before. "Come in," she said, stepping back with a smile that made me forget how to walk for a moment. "I hope you're hungry." The kitchen smelled incredible, herbs and roasted vegetables, and something that made my mouth water instantly. Diana had set the table with actual cloth napkins, 2 plates waiting beside a perfectly golden chicken surrounded by colorful vegetables. "This looks amazing," I managed, watching her fidget slightly with a dish towel. "It's nothing fancy," she said, but I could tell she was pleased. "Just rosemary chicken. Don't really cook like this much anymore. Robert's always traveling, and Jake's barely home these days." She shrugged, trying to make it sound casual. "It's nice to have someone to cook for again." We ate at the kitchen island, talking easily about my classes, her work, the weather turning warmer. When we finished, Diana wrapped leftovers while I carried the new car parts to the garage. The space felt smaller than I remembered, especially with Diana staying close to watch each step of the repair. "So this connects to the transmission?" she asked, leaning in as I positioned the new oil pan. Her perfume, something light and floral, made it hard to concentrate on the technical explanation. "Yeah, exactly." I reached for a wrench, and our fingers brushed as she tried to hand it to me at the same time. The touch sent a jolt through my arm that had nothing to do with mechanics. The work required careful maneuvering in the tight space. Every time I shifted position, Diana moved with me like we were dancing some complicated waltz. When I needed better leverage to reach a difficult bolt, she held the work light steady, her hip pressed against my shoulder. I tried to focus on the repair, but each accidental touch left me increasingly aware of her presence. The setting sun streamed through the garage's small window, filling the space with honey-colored light. Diana's yellow dress caught the glow, creating a soft halo effect that made it impossible not to stare when she wasn't looking. She'd rolled up the skirt slightly to sit more comfortably, revealing tan legs crossed at the ankle. "What are your plans after graduation?" she asked suddenly, breaking the comfortable silence that had settled between us. "It's coming up soon, isn't it?" I paused, wrench mid-turn. 2 months, I confirmed, grateful to have something concrete to focus on. "I actually got a job offer last week." "That's wonderful." She touched my arm briefly in congratulation. "Where?" "Seattle." "Good company, great salary." I tried to sound more enthusiastic than I felt. Everything I should want. Diana caught the hesitation in my voice. But. I sat back on my heels, wiping my hands on the shop rag. "It means leaving everything familiar behind. Everyone I know is here. Jake's staying local for grad school. My family's here. I glanced up at her, then quickly away. Sometimes I wonder if I'm ready for that big a change. That's a lot of pressure to put on yourself," she said softly. The understanding in her voice made something in my chest ache. "Have you told them you're uncertain?" "Not yet. My parents are so excited about the offer. And Jake." I shrugged. "He'd probably tell me I'm crazy to even consider turning it down." Diana was quiet for a moment, watching me work. When she spoke again, her voice carried a weight I hadn't heard before. "Sometimes the hardest part isn't making the choice. It's admitting to yourself what you really want." I looked up at her then and found her eyes already on mine. The garage felt very still, very warm in the fading sunlight. Her words seemed to hang between us, heavy with meaning I wasn't sure. I was ready to understand. We moved back inside as twilight settled, the kitchen now lit by warm overhead lights. Diana insisted I sit while she reheated our plates. I'd eaten at this table hundreds of times over the years. Rowdy dinners with Jake, holiday gatherings, rushed breakfasts before school events. But tonight, with just the two of us, the familiar space felt different. More intimate. Deanna set our plates down and poured 2 glasses of water, ice cubes clinking softly. You know, she said, settling into the chair across from me, I had my own big decision moment once. Right around your age, actually. I looked up, caught by something in her tone. She traced the rim of her water glass, lost in thought for a moment. There was this art residency program in Portland, she continued. Very competitive, only accepted 12 photographers each year. I'd submitted this whole series on abandoned buildings, the way nature was slowly reclaiming them. Her eyes lit up as she described it. I wanted to document urban decay and renewal, the poetry in forgotten spaces. Did you get in? I asked, though I suspected I knew the answer. I did. She smiled, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. I was 23, had everything planned out, and then ... She gestured vaguely around the kitchen. I found out I was pregnant with Jake. The way she said, found out, carried the weight of 20 years of what-ifs. I could hear them all in those 2 simple words. What would you have photographed? I asked carefully, wanting to give her space to share more. Diana's expression softened. Everything. The city's hidden corners, places most people walk past without seeing. I had this whole vision of capturing the exact moment between decay and rebirth. You know, when wildflowers start growing through broken concrete. She paused, pushing food around her plate. Sometimes I wonder who that version of me would have become. It's not too late, I offered quietly, to pursue photography again. She gave me a sad but appreciative smile. Sweet of you to say that. Her voice was gentle, acknowledging both the kindness and naivety of youth. After dinner, while helping clear the table, I noticed the old radio on the counter, the one Jake had promised to fix months ago. Without really thinking about it, I went to get my tools from the garage. What are you doing? Diana asked when I returned, watching from the doorway as I examined the radio. Jake mentioned this was broken. I started removing the back panel. Mind if I take a look? She crossed her arms, leaning against the doorframe. You don't have to do that. I want to. I found the loose connection almost immediately, a simple fix. Besides, it's kind of my thing, figuring out how things work. Making them work better. Diana stayed in the doorway, watching as I efficiently diagnosed and repaired the problem. Her presence was like a physical thing, warming the space between us. When I reconnected the power and clear music replaced the previous static, her small intake of breath made me look up. The expression on her face stopped my heart for a moment, something vulnerable and dangerous and entirely new. She pushed off from the doorframe, taking a few steps closer. Do you always take such good care of things that aren't yours? She asked softly. The question hung in the air between us, its real meaning crystal clear. My hand stilled on the radio as I met her gaze. The kitchen suddenly felt very quiet despite the music playing, time stretching like honey in the space between one heartbeat and the next. I opened my mouth to respond, but no words came. Diana held my gaze for one more weighted moment before looking away, breaking whatever spell had started to weave itself in that quiet kitchen. I spent most of Tuesday convincing myself that everything with Diana had been in my head. The lingering handshake, those loaded glances, her question about taking care of things. I'd probably imagined the weight behind it all. Tonight would be different. I'd finish the car, maintain clear boundaries, and get our relationship back to what it should be. My best friend's mom, nothing more. The evening sun was still bright when I pulled into the driveway. Diana came out to meet me, wearing faded jeans and a plain white t-shirt. Her hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, and something in her demeanor suggested she'd come to the same resolution I had. We needed distance, normalcy. Ready to finish this up? She asked, her tone deliberately casual. Should only take about an hour, I replied, matching her professional attitude. Then you'll have your car back. We settled into a rhythm as I worked. Our conversation strictly focused on the repair. Diana handed me tools when asked, but otherwise kept her distance, busying herself with organizing the workbench. The garage felt cooler without yesterday's charged atmosphere, and I told myself this was better. I was deep in concentration, making final adjustments to the oil pan when I heard Diana's footsteps approaching. "Thought you might need some water," she said, crouching down beside the car. I slid out from underneath to take the glass, but something went wrong in the handoff. Our fingers tangled around the smooth surface, neither of us quite letting go. Time seemed to slow as we both held on. The glass caught between us like some kind of crystal lens, magnifying every point where our skin touched. A small splash of water broke the moment, spilling onto my shirt. We both jumped, then laughed nervously as I took the glass properly. "Sorry," Diana said, though I wasn't sure what she was apologizing for, the water or the moment before it. I expected her to step away after that, but she stayed close, settling cross-legged on the concrete floor. "Show me what you're doing?" she asked. "I'd like to understand the process." What could I say? No? I found myself pointing out each adjustment, explaining the mechanics in detail. Diana leaned in to see better, and suddenly I was acutely aware of her proximity. Her breath whispered warm against my neck as she peered at where I was pointing. My hands started shaking slightly as I worked, making simple tasks feel impossible. "So this connection here," I managed, trying to keep my voice steady, "controls the oil flow back into the system." Diana murmured, still close enough that I could smell her shampoo, something light and floral that made it hard to focus. After what felt like hours but was probably only minutes, I forced myself to concentrate on the final steps. "Ready to test it?" I asked, my voice rougher than I intended. Diana nodded and stepped back, giving me space to slide out and move to the driver's seat. I turned the key, holding my breath. The engine caught immediately, purring with a smooth, healthy sound that made me grin with satisfaction. Diana's gasp of delight was pure joy. "You did it!" Without thinking, and I mean truly without a single rational thought, I caught her by the waist and lifted her in celebration. It was something I might have done with any friend after a successful project, a purely instinctive reaction to shared triumph. But this wasn't any friend. We froze mid-spin, the reality of our position crashing over us like a wave. My hand spanned her waist, fingers pressing gently into the soft cotton of her shirt. Her hands had landed on my shoulders, warm and steady. Our faces were inches apart, close enough that I could see flecks of green in her hazel eyes count each quick breath that parted her lips. Neither of us moved. Neither of us spoke. The garage was silent except for the gentle idle of the newly repaired engine and the thundering of my heart, which seemed determined to escape my chest entirely. Moments stretched like warm honey, neither of us moving. Then slowly, reluctantly, I lowered Diana back to her feet. My hands lingered at her waist a heartbeat too long before falling away. She stepped back just enough to break contact, but not far enough to pretend nothing had happened. The garage air felt thick with unspoken words. The engine's soft purr seemed to underscore the tension rather than break it. Diana's chest rose and fell with quick breaths that matched my own. The setting sun painted everything in amber light, softening edges and creating shadows that felt both intimate and dangerous. "Would you like some coffee?" Diana's voice was carefully neutral, but her fingers twisted the hem of her shirt. I should leave. I knew I should leave. The responsible thing would be to say goodnight, get in my car, and drive away until this strange magnetic pull between us faded back to normal. "Coffee would be nice," I heard myself say instead. Diana nodded, leading the way into the house. The familiar living room felt different in the evening light. Jake's childhood photos lined the walls, school portraits, sports teams, family vacations. His young face smiled down at us as we settled. Onto the couch, maintaining a careful cushion of space between us. While we waited for the coffee to brew, Diana's gaze fixed on a recent photo of Jake at his college graduation. "Sometimes I feel like I'm disappearing," she said softly. "Robert's always traveling for work now. Jake has his own life. Most days I walk around this house wondering who I am when I'm not being someone's wife or someone's mother." The raw honesty in her voice made my chest ache. "How long has Robert been gone this time?" 3 weeks. "He'll be back for a few days. Next month." She gave a small, humorless laugh. "Sometimes I think he forgets what I look like between trips." I watched her profile in the fading light, seeing not my best friend's mom, but a woman wrestling with her own identity. "I can't imagine anyone forgetting what you look like," I said quietly. Diana turned to me, something vulnerable flickering across her face. "What about you? You seem so sure of your path." "God, no." I leaned back, running a hand through my hair. "Everyone expects me to have it all figured out. Graduate, take the job offer, start climbing the corporate ladder. But most days I feel like I'm just improvising, pretending I know what I'm doing." "At least you're honest about it," Diana said. "I've been pretending for so long I sometimes forget what's real." As we talked, the space between us on the couch gradually shrank. I couldn't tell if she was moving closer or if I was, or if we were both being pulled by some invisible force. The coffee sat forgotten on the table as Diana turned to face me fully, drawing one leg up onto the cushion. Her eyes met mine with an intensity that made my breath catch. "Do you know what you're doing to me?" she asked, her voice steady despite the slight tremor I could see in her hands. "These past few days, the way you look at me, the way you listen, really listen. Do you understand what that's doing?" My heart hammered against my ribs. The question hung in the air between us, demanding truth. I could still leave, could still laugh it off, make an excuse, preserve the safe version of our relationship. Instead, I matched her honesty with my own. "Since Saturday in the garage," I admitted, "when you sat down beside me to learn about the car, you're all I can think about. The way you move, how your eyes light up when you talk about photography, the sound of your laugh. I know I shouldn't notice these things, but I do. I can't stop noticing." Diana drew in a sharp breath, her fingers gripping the fabric of the couch cushion between us. The confession hung in the air, too real to take back, too powerful to ignore. Outside, a car drove past, its headlights sweeping across the wall and making the photo's glass frames glint like watching eyes. Diana sat perfectly still, absorbing my confession. The sunset had faded to deep blues through the windows, leaving us in the soft glow of a single lamp. I watched emotions flicker across her face, surprise, uncertainty, and something that looked like relief. "Should I leave?" I asked quietly, giving her an escape route if she needed it. Instead of pulling away, Diana shifted closer on the couch. "No," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "That's the last thing I want." She took a shaky breath. "But we need to be clear about what this is, what we're risking." Jake ... double quote, she paused, pain crossing her features. "He trusts both of us completely. And there's Robert, my marriage. Even if it's not perfect, it's still ... She gestured helplessly. "No," I said, keeping my voice gentle but serious. "And the age difference. I've thought about all of it, Diana. Every complicated piece." She studied my face in the dim light. "Have you? Really? Because this could destroy everything stable in both our lives. One mistake, one person seeing something. They shouldn't." "I've barely slept since Saturday, turning it all over in my mind," I admitted. "The consequences, the secrecy we'd need, how careful we'd have to be. I understand what's at stake. Diana's fingers twisted together in her lap. Tell me what you want, she said suddenly. Not what you think you should say, not what sounds responsible. What do you actually want? The question hung between us, demanding absolute honesty. I could feel my heart pounding as I met her eyes. I want to kiss you, I said, my voice low but steady. I've wanted to since you laughed at my terrible joke in the garage. The real laugh, not the polite one. When your whole face lit up and you looked at me like you were seeing me for the first time. Her breath caught audibly. For a moment, neither of us moved. Then slowly, so slowly, Diana reached out. Her fingers traced along my jaw, feather-light but deliberate. The touch sent electricity down my spine. We would need to be so careful, she whispered, her thumb brushing my cheek. No one could know, especially Jake. It would devastate him. I know, I agreed softly. Whatever terms you need, whatever boundaries, I'll respect them. We can stop this now if you want to. Or we can be careful, be smart about it. Diana's hand slid to the back of my neck, her touch still questioning. She leaned in gradually, giving me every chance to pull away. Instead, I met her halfway. The first brush of her lips against mine was careful, testing. We both held back, acknowledging the weight of the line we were crossing. Then Diana made a soft sound in the back of her throat, something between a sigh and a whimper, and the kiss deepened. Her fingers tightened in my hair as my hands found her waist, drawing her closer. When we finally broke apart, we were both breathing hard. Diana's eyes searched mine, her lips slightly parted. Are you sure? She whispered. Really sure? Because once we do this ... I've never been more sure of anything, I said, meaning every word. But I need you to be sure too. Diana's response was to kiss me again, this time with purpose and certainty. Her fingers curled into my shirt, pulling me closer as months of unspoken tension dissolved into this moment. When we broke apart, her eyes were clear and focused. We need to talk about this, she said, her hand still resting against my chest. About what we're doing, what it means. I nodded, appreciating how she wasn't shying away from the reality of our situation. Tell me what you're thinking. This stays between us, Diana said firmly. No one can know, not just for my sake, but for yours too. Your friendship with Jake, your reputation. I won't let this hurt your future. I understand, I agreed. Complete discretion. And if either of us becomes uncomfortable, we stop. No questions asked. She smiled, touching my face. You're handling this so maturely. Thank you for not making me feel like I need to manage you, I suppose. For treating this as seriously as I am. Age difference or not, we're both adults making a choice, I said quietly. I respect you too much to treat this casually. Diana stood then, her movements deliberate as she held out her hand. My heart started racing as I took it, understanding exactly what she was offering. She led me through the familiar hallway, past Jake's closed door with its faded sports posters, toward the master bedroom at the end. Each step felt weighted with significance. At the threshold, Diana paused. The room beyond was cast in warm light, from bedside lamps, making everything feel softer, more intimate. She turned to face me, her expression serious. Last chance, she whispered. We can still walk back from this, pretend none of it happened. Once we cross this line ... Instead of answering, I stepped forward, drawing her into my arms. She came. Willingly, her body fitting against mine as if we'd done this 1,000 times before. Diana reached behind her, pushing the door closed with a soft click that seemed to echo in the quiet house. The room felt both familiar and completely foreign. I'd glimpsed it before when helping Jake grab something from his parents' closet, but now every detail felt amplified. The neat stack of books on her nightstand, the silver frame mirror on the dresser, the subtle floral scent that I'd always associated with her. Diana faced me, her hands coming up to frame my face. "This feels different," she said softly. "From?" "Anything I've experienced before. More deliberate, like we're both fully choosing it, eyes wide open." "We are," I agreed, understanding exactly what she meant. "No alcohol, no impulse decisions, no excuses. Just us, making this choice together." She nodded, her fingers moving to the buttons of my shirt. Each one she undid slowly, maintaining eye contact, giving me plenty of time to stop her. But I didn't want to stop. I wanted to remember every second of this. The way the lamplight caught the auburn highlights in her hair, how her breath hitched slightly when my hand settled on her waist, the complete certainty I felt despite every complication. "Still okay?" Diana asked, pausing halfway down my shirt. "More than okay," I assured her, watching how her pupils dilated at my words. Her fingers resumed their work, each button revealing more skin. "Tell me if anything becomes too much," she whispered. "Promise me." "I promise," I said, my voice rough with emotion. "Same goes for you. We're in this together." The vulnerability in her eyes matched what I was feeling, a mix of desire and trust that made everything more intense. Diana finished with my buttons, her hands sliding up my bare chest with deliberate slowness. I shivered at her touch, and she smiled. Not her usual polite smile, but something darker, more primal. "I've thought about this," she admitted, her fingers tracing patterns on my skin, "more than I should have." "Me too," I confessed, watching her eyes darken further at my words. "Especially since Saturday." Diana's hands moved to my shoulders, pushing my shirt back slowly. "Show me," she whispered, and I felt the last of my hesitation dissolve at the trust in her voice. I woke to unfamiliar shadows and the soft sound of breathing beside me. The digital clock on Diana's knitstand read 3:15 in the morning, its red numbers casting a faint glow across the room. Diana was curled against me, her hair spilling across the pillow we shared, one hand resting lightly on my chest. Knew I should leave, that staying increased our chances of being discovered, but I couldn't bring myself to move yet. Instead, I studied her face in the dim light, memorizing how peaceful she looked in sleep, how the worry lines that usually creased her forehead had smoothed the way as if sensing my attention. Diana stirred. Her eyes fluttered open, immediately, finding mine in the darkness. Neither of us spoke at first, lying there facing each other as the pre-dawn gray began seeping through the curtains. The moment felt fragile, like blown glass that might shatter if handled too roughly. Diana reached out, her fingers tracing my features with deliberate gentleness, across my brow, down my cheek, along my jaw. Her touch felt like she was trying to commit every detail to memory. "Jake can never know about this," she whispered finally, her voice thick with emotion. "It would destroy everything, his trust in me, your friendship with him. I couldn't bear that." "I know," I said softly, though the thought of pretending nothing had happened between us seemed impossible. How could I see her at family dinners, laugh at Jake's jokes, and act like this night hadn't changed everything? Diana's hand stilled against my cheek. "This might have to be enough," she said, her eyes searching mine. "Just this one perfect night. Could you live with that?" I wanted to lie, to promise her anything, but she deserved honesty. "I don't know," I admitted, "but I understand why it might need to be." She moved closer, tucking her head beneath my chin. I wrapped my arms around her, feeling her warmth against me as the room slowly brightened. We lay there in silence, both aware of time slipping away like water through our fingers. "Robert gets back Thursday," Diana said after a while, her words muffled against my chest. The mention of her husband sent a painful tightness through my ribs, reality intruding on our borrowed time. I stroked her hair, trying to memorize its texture, the way it slipped through my fingers like silk. Part of me wanted to ask what would happen after Thursday, but I already knew the answer. We'd go back to our assigned roles. Jake's best friend, Jake's mom, pretending this night had never existed. The harsh buzz of Diana's alarm made us both flinch. 5:30 a.m. The sound seemed to break whatever spell had held us suspended between night and day. Diana reached over to silence it, then turned back to me with resignation in her eyes. "You should go," she said quietly. "The neighbors will be waking up soon, morning joggers, people leaving for work." I nodded, though neither of us moved immediately. Finally, Diana sat up, pulling her robe from where it lay draped across a chair. I watched as she wrapped it around herself, the material hiding the marks I'd left on her collarbone hours earlier. Moved downstairs with exaggerated slowness, as if walking through honey. Each step felt heavy with the knowledge that once I walked out her door, everything would change. Diana paused at the bottom of the stairs, looking smaller somehow in the gray morning light. "I need to check if anyone's out there," she whispered, moving to peer through the front window's blinds. The domesticity of the moment, her in her robe, checking for nosy neighbors, made my chest ache with impossible longing. The street was empty. The house is dark except for a few kitchen windows where early risers were starting their day. Diana turned back to me, and I saw the same pain I was feeling reflected in her eyes. "It's clear," she said softly. "You should be able to make it to your car without being seen." We stood there for a moment longer, prolonging these last seconds together. Diana reached up, straightening my collar with trembling fingers. The gesture was so intimate, so ordinary, that I had to close my eyes against a sudden rush of emotion. Diana pressed a travel mug into my hands at the front door, the same dark blue ceramic one she'd served me coffee in just days ago, when this all started in her garage. The familiar weight of it felt significant now, loaded with meaning neither of us could voice. "For the drive home," she said softly, though we both knew it was more than that. It was something tangible to carry away from this night, proof it hadn't been just a dream. I looked down at the mug, its warmth seeping into my palms, then back at Diana. She stood there in her robe, hair slightly mussed, looking both vulnerable and beautiful in the gray morning light. I couldn't help reaching out one last time, my fingers tracing the curve of her cheek. She leaned into the touch, eyes closing briefly. "Jake's coming home for lunch today," she murmured, though she didn't pull away. "We need to be careful about ... evidence." The word hung between us, heavy with implications. Evidence of what we'd done, what lines we'd crossed, what trust we might have broken. I nodded, drawing my hand back reluctantly. "I'll be discreet," I promised, though the word felt hollow and insufficient for what we were agreeing to hide. How could such a simple term encompass the weight of what had passed between us? Diana stepped back then, wrapping her arms around herself as if suddenly cold. The physical distance felt like practice for what was coming, the careful space we'd need to maintain going forward. I turned toward the door, each step requiring conscious effort. My hand was on the knob when Diana called my name, so quietly. I almost missed it. I looked back, finding her expression open and unguarded. "Thank you," she said, "for fixing more than just my car." The words hit me square in the chest, making it hard to breathe for a moment. I wanted to go back to her, to argue that we could find another way, but I knew we'd already made our choice. Instead, I gave her a small nod, trying to convey everything I couldn't say, then stepped out into the morning. The walk to my car felt longer than usual. The neighborhood was still quiet, though birds had begun their morning chorus and sprinklers were starting up on a few lawns. Everything looked exactly the same as it had yesterday, though nothing felt the same at all. I glanced in my rearview mirror as I pulled away, watching Diana's silhouette in the doorway grow smaller and less distinct until distance finally obscured it completely. My throat felt tight as I turned the corner, knowing this was really happening. We were really ending something that had barely had the chance to begin. The coffee's aroma filled my car, rich and familiar. I took a careful sip. At a stop sign, letting the taste roll over my tongue. It was perfect, exactly how I liked it, cream, no sugar. Of course she'd remembered. The simple fact that she knew this detail about me made my chest ache. I drove through the awakening streets, each mile taking me further from Diana's house while my mind stayed firmly in her bedroom, replaying moments I knew I'd need to lock away. In 3 hours, I would text Jake about hanging out, pretending nothing had shifted in my world. We'd probably grab lunch, play video games, and I'd have to look him in the eye knowing what his mother and I had shared. My fingers tightened around the travel mug, its warmth already fading. I wondered if Deanna was still standing in her doorway, or if she'd already started erasing the evidence of our night together, straightening sheets, opening windows, returning to her regular routine. The thought made me grip the mug harder, grateful to have this one tangible reminder of what we'd agreed to let go. As I pulled into my driveway, the sky had lightened to a pale blue, promising another beautiful spring day. I sat there for a moment, engine off, holding Diana's coffee mug and watching early morning joggers pass by. They smiled and waved, completely unaware that my world had tilted on its axis overnight. Finally, I gathered myself enough to go inside, carrying the mug like something precious. Because it was precious, it held not just coffee, but memories of Diana's kitchen, her smile as she'd handed it to me, and the bittersweet understanding that sometimes the right thing and the hardest thing are the same. I'd been staring at the clock on my laptop for 20 minutes, watching numbers tick past midnight when I finally gave up on sleep. My new apartment still felt strange after 6 months. Too quiet, too clean, too adult. The city lights filtered through half-drawn blinds, casting unfamiliar shadows across bare walls I hadn't gotten around to decorating yet. Standing from my desk, I reached for the dark blue coffee mug that now held an assortment of pens and pencils. My fingers traced its rim, remembering steam rising between us that first morning in her garage. Sometimes the smallest things become anchors for memories we can't let go. The package had arrived yesterday, sitting unopened on my coffee table, where I'd left it after recognizing Diana's precise handwriting on the label. I hadn't been ready then, but now, in the quiet hours when the world felt less real, I carefully broke the seal. Inside was a sleek black portfolio, professional and substantial. My hands weren't entirely steady as I lifted it out. A cream-colored envelope fell into my lap, my name written in her flowing script. I opened it slowly, unfolding the letter inside. Dear Ethan, I've been trying to write this letter for weeks, wanting to find the right words. Maybe that's fitting. I'm learning to trust images more than language these days. The enclosed portfolio represents 6 months of work, of rediscovering who I am behind a lens. And I wanted you to be the first to know I applied to the Portland residency program, the same one I almost took 23 years ago. Yesterday, they called to tell me I was accepted. Robert and I have agreed to a separation. In truth, we've been heading there for years, both just too comfortable with familiar unhappiness to admit it. He's taking an extended position in London, and I start in Portland this spring. Sometimes broken things need complete rebuilding. Not just patches. You taught me that, though you probably didn't mean to. Jake called me last week, so excited about my mom renaissance, as he calls it. He's proud, confused, supportive in that beautifully oblivious way of his. I hope you know I'll never tell him about those 3 days. Some catalysts need to remain private to stay pure. Thank you for seeing me when I'd forgotten how to see myself. Diana. I spread the portfolio contents across my coffee table, each photo more stunning than the last. Diana's eye for detail was remarkable, She captured moments of transformation, finding beauty in abandoned spaces and broken things. Urban decay bloomed into renewal through her lens. Shadows always reaching toward light. Then I saw it. A photograph that stopped my breath. A garage interior at sunset, tools scattered across concrete in careful disarray, golden light streaming through dusty windows. I knew that space intimately. The angle perfectly caught how evening sun turned ordinary objects into poetry, making everything it touched look like possibility. With trembling fingers, I turned the photo over. On the back, in her handwriting, some repairs change everything. No regrets. D. I sat there for a long time, holding that image, remembering how the light had looked on her face that first evening, how her laugh had changed everything, how careful we'd been with each other's hearts, even knowing we couldn't keep them. Jake's call last week made more sense now, his excitement about his mom's creative awakening, his casual mention that his parents were trying something new. He had no idea that his best friend had helped spark his mother's revolution. Standing, I walked to my kitchen window. The city was beautiful at night, all glitter and promise. I took the garage photo to my desk, sliding it carefully into the simple black frame I'd bought months ago but left empty. It looked right there, catching the city lights, a reminder that sometimes the bravest thing we can do is let go of what's comfortable to reach for what's true. Morning was breaking over the skyline now, painting everything in shades of pearl and possibility. I picked up Diana's coffee mug, the one that had started everything, and walked to my kitchen. For the first time since moving here, I added a pinch of cinnamon to my coffee grounds before brewing, the way she always had. Familiar scent filled my apartment as I stood at my window, watching the sunrise over my new city. I was grateful for those 3 days when fixing a car became fixing two lives, hers toward freedom, mine toward understanding what it means to love something enough to let it go. The coffee tasted like memory and healing, like endings that become beginnings if you're brave enough to turn the page. If this kept you company, tap subscribe and leave one line that resonated. I read them all, and your words shape the next story.